Meeting of the county. Please join me to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank all of you on Zoom. Screen is now active. We're recording. And let me remind everybody on the board to speak loudly so that the owl can pick it up and people at home can hear us and the recording can be heard. And anybody who is on Zoom and wants to make a comment or ask a question, just indicate by raising your hand. And Phil will unmute you and let you in. Recusal check. Anybody have anything on the agenda that needs to be recused? Hearing nothing, we can move right along. June town board meeting minutes. Ruth took those for us. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Any questions or comments?
No.
If not, could I get a motion to approve as presented, please? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Next item is the Committee for Respectful Behavior. Just as background, we started a dialogue, I think it was at our April or May meeting, passed a resolution to create a Committee for Respectful Behavior, set a date for applicants, and then extended that date at our May meeting or June meeting to the July meeting. So we had 6 people going into the June meeting, and we picked up one more in the last 30 days. But we lost one. Somebody contacted me, and I think I circulated that email to everybody, indicating she would not be able to participate. So we have 6 candidates, and the resolution before us is a recommendation that we appoint all 6 of the volunteers for the Committee for Respectful Behavior, and that we also ask Councilwoman Hunt and Councilwoman Gold to serve as the town board liaison to the committee and help get it organized, and that the committee go and review the draft policy that we have presented and reviewed, and also review and prepare a complaint procedure. And once those 2 documents are done and the training program is identified, to come back to the board with a recommendation, and the board will review and approve with whatever modifications we feel appropriate the proposals of the Committee for Respectful Behavior. The resolution also indicates that we will continue to accept applications for the committee going forward, and will not put any kind of artificial timeline on the termination of the application process. So that is the resolution. Does anybody have any question or comment about that resolution?
The time frame is just going to be open-ended.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to get the group organized. They're going to want to look at stuff, and when the group is ready to present it to the town board, just let us know.
And initially, we talked about having 7-member committee. The question is, do we want to stick with that? We have 6. Do we want to appoint? Well, we can appoint all 6, but one could be an alternate, or
Well, I
we
would
think
think
7 is a better number.
I would think just appoint all 6. If you get more applicants, we can, deal with that.
Okay.
My hunch is you're not going to get all 6 participating
Right.
every time you meet. You'll have to decide what the meeting schedule is.
And they can decide that once they're appointed, and we have
Right.
initial meetings.
Exactly, an organizational meeting, they'll need to appoint a chair,
Right.
and you all can kind of help with procedural stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I think the most important first step is to get a draft of the policy. We've made some modifications to it. I circulated something last week. I think the most significant open issue was the role of the committee in conducting investigations. And I modified the document to reflect that the committee could recommend an investigation, but the town board would have to decide on the investigation and retain whatever outside counsel the board sees fit to do the investigation. And I think that makes sense because I think the board should maintain that kind of control over the investigatory process. And as I think Elena pointed out to us, it's really hard for a committee to do an investigation. That investigations by their nature require some intense scrutiny and a single focus to become effective.
I would just say that I did serve on the ethics board and we did investigations. It was a good process there already and it was fine. I mean, we didn't have to have outside counsel luckily. But we did it with the ethics. And
Well,
maybe
the
we can
proposal for this is that
look at that.
the town board will retain the decision-making on doing the investigation and will have the decision-making power to appoint somebody if the town board chooses to.
I think also the town board will have the last word on any resolution or
Yes. On the policy,
whatever.
yeah, on the policy statement, the code of conduct and the complaint procedure. On the complaint procedure, just so you know, I went back to the employee manual, looked at the section on complaint procedure for harassment, asked the people who wrote the manual to modify that section to reflect respectful and disrespectful behavior. So hopefully we'll have a draft of that procedure for the committee to look at once it gets started.
And this whole thing will be added to the employee manual.
Correct. Correct. So that's basically what the resolution says. Hugh, do you have any comments on this?
I understand the call for a committee. That's fine, along with basically the four elements that they're charged to produce. I do believe that the investigative aspect of it, and whether it's by the committee or outside, is certainly the key. I could well see a time when, depending on the process the committee recommends and the board adopts for receiving complaints, that perhaps there is a time that the committee may not be necessary in the future. We currently have in the employee handbook a mechanism for receiving complaints and for initiating investigations, and we have used that. So I hope ultimately that this will mesh well and thoroughly with what we currently have in the employee handbook in concept and in process, simplifying things for everybody.
Okay, thank you. David, any comments or questions?
No.
No, okay. Amy, any comments? Bonnie?
I'll just say that this kind of all came out of the original investigation with our attorney. And I went back and looked at that again, and in her final report to us, there were 25 recommendations that she listed. 8 of them had to do with training. She's, they're a little bit redundant, but, and 4 of them had to do with policy changes. So I think it's behooves us to go back and look at that and see what else we can do to in the past, we had recommendations we didn't follow up on.
Yeah, I think this committee, going from working on appointing a committee to having a committee that can do those things,
Yeah.
I think is terribly important.
Particularly the training part. And-
Yes, that's one of the 4 things that the resolution
Right.
charges the committee with doing is developing a training program.
And I went back and looked at it and realized we had 8 different categories of training we
Yeah.
can look at. I think that needs to be one of the things that we focus on.
Of course.
And then she also talked about just going back over the committee structure and process, having a mission statement for committee, just kind of revisiting that so that if that stuff is in place, problems don't come up as often,
Again,
is the point.
the Committee for Respectful Behaviors mission, if you go
Right,
back and
no.
look at the resolution, is to do some specific things and then anything else they think is important
Right.
to enhance respectful behaviors. All the things you're talking about as the liaison to the committee, you should encourage them to look at.
I will, I'm just
Sure.
pointing it out for everybody to, because I just went over this report again, and it's gonna be an interesting process with the committee to look at some of these things, and then come back to the board and say, this is what we
Good, good. Okay,
But I'm really glad we're moving forward with this. I think it'll be helpful for all the boards and committees to have that in the background.
Yep.
To look at what we have in place to make it better.
I agree.
So,
Okay. So with that, anybody on Zoom have any questions or comments?
Yep,
Okay,
a couple of people. First one is
might be committee
the Terry Boyle has a question.
applicants.
who's the first one?
Terry Boyle,
Terry Boyles, okay. Terry,
he's not there yet, I'm asking him.
oh, okay.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Terry. Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, I do. My question is, will anybody be charged if it's not at a meeting? Meaning if people are having a conversation, like Bonnie Hunt said at the last time I was at a meeting, that the problem that she had wasn't at a meeting. So I don't know how far this can go.
Oh, I see what you mean. If it's kind of not at a specific meeting, but in the normal course of dealing with each other on the outside of town business?
Yes, she had said that this occurred not at a public meeting. And the other part of that question is, if these problems aren't at meetings, why are we participating in trying to straighten them out?
Okay, that's a good question. I think the simple answer is if the incident is not part of a town government activity, it's probably not something that the committee should deal with. But if it's part of a town government activity that is outside of a meeting structure, it probably is okay for the committee to look at. That would be my first reaction. Anybody else have any comments on that?
That's basically the way I read the current language that's in the draft.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So Terry, I guess the answer to your question is, if it is related to town business, it counts. If it's not, if it's a personal, interpersonal kind of thing, it doesn't count. If it's a political kind of thing, it doesn't count.
So that's where I'm confused, because when I was at the town board meeting in person the last time, it was said to me that that didn't happen at a meeting.
Well, I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but
Well, I didn't either, but Bonnie Hunt said that, and it's in the newspaper when they wrote the article.
I don't know what you're referring to.
What?
I don't know what you're referring to, Terry. What was said in the newspaper?
When I asked what the problems were, you said a lot of times they are not at a meeting.
I don't think that's what I said.
Well, it's in black and white in the newspaper.
Are you reading it from the newspaper? I don't remember that being there. Maybe it was a hypothetical question. I'm not really sure, Terry. I'm sorry.
But Terry, I think the answer is if it's not at a meeting, but it's town business, it can be considered by the committee. If it's not in a town meeting and it's not related to town business, it should not be. That would be the rule,
Yes. Okay.
okay?
I'm in agreement with that.
So what else do you have, Terry?
That's it for now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who else do we have there, Philip?
Our only question, somebody raised their hand, but
That's the only question?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any other applicants there.
Well, we'll get to them and ask them to,
Oh, later.
yes, after we've adopted and appointed,
Oh, I see.
then we will ask them to introduce themselves if they're available. Not all of them are,
Right.
but some of them are.
Oh, wait, Mike Citron now has a question.
Mike Citron, okay, Michael, right?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I have two questions. First question is there gonna be a budget line item for this committee's work? Because if there's an investigation, it could cost a lot of money.
there won't be any specific line item for this committee's work, but if there is an investigation, we will charge the legal code like we normally do.
Okay. Thank you. And the second question is, if there's 6 members on the committee, what happens if they come to a 3-3 tie on an issue?
They keep talking about it until they all can agree or one more changes his mind or her mind.
So it's gonna be a majority situation or a unanimous situation?
I think if we have 6, we should have, only have 5 in an alternate, because that might come up.
Yeah, the committee can decide that, Michael. I don't think we need to set that guideline.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Good.
Okay, we have, let's see. I think Terry's got another question.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey, I forgot. I did have one more question. Sorry. Is this committee of 6 people, all females?
No, there are 2 men who are on the committee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, anybody else on Zoom, Philip?
Oh, that's it for questions now.
Okay. So let's go to the respectful behavior resolution. There's one change I would like to make, and that is Irene Lovitz has indicated she cannot serve on the committee, so we will take her out as one of the 6. There are 7 people mentioned. She will not be one of them. But all of the others, I think, are still committed to joining the committee. So let me read this resolution, as it is a fairly significant step we're taking. Resolved that the following individuals are appointed to the Committee for Respectful Behavior: Bill Walter, Dave Hall, Elaine Connell, Amy Allen, Jacqueline Ryan, and Abby Westlake, to recommend to the town board final draft of the respectful behavior policy and code of conduct, a respectful behavior complaint procedure, and training programs for town staff and volunteers to encourage respectful behavior. It is further resolved that Councilwoman Hunt and Councilwoman Bonnie Hunt and Amy Gold will serve as the town board liaison to the Committee for Respectful Behavior and will assist the Committee for Respectful Behavior to organize and appoint a chair or co-chairs, and it is further resolved that the town board will continue to accept applications for membership on the Committee for Respectful Behavior. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution? Amy, thank you. Bonnie, thank you.
Thank you.
Monica, could you do a roll call vote on this, please?
Councilwoman Hunt,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gold, yes. Supervisor Lassner.
Yes.
Councilman Boyce,
No.
Councilman Clark.
Yes.
Okay, 4-1, it is approved, so thank you all very much. Moving right along, I
You have an applicant here. I don't know.
oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Dave, would you like to introduce yourself? Dave is one of the applicants who we just appointed to this committee.
Sure, thanks so much. Hello, Ancram. It's good to be here. My name is Dave Hall. I live in Wilson-Berry Grove. I've been here about 12 years, but only living here full-time, short time. So I'm kind of a newcomer to town business. I'm a musician and a real estate agent, and it is as a real estate agent, I volunteered to help out in the town housing committee, and I'm now co-chairing that with Bonnie Hunt, and we've been doing good work with some great neighbors, really excellent. My family has been in New England for about 15 generations, so town meetings are in my blood. That's the English American side of my family. My Arab American family has been here in the Hudson Valley, in Dutchess, Columbia, and Ulster counties for about 6 generations. We've been serving in the professions, serving government, and in the armed forces. And one reason I was inspired to volunteer for this committee is because, as many folks may know, for the last couple of decades, the Arab American community has been subject to a lot of difficult situations at the town level all over the country when it comes to our freedom of religion and law enforcement issues. And I've, in fact, in a neighboring town, had a bit of an official snub as an Arab American just in the last couple of years, so it's rather close to home to me. So while I know that the primary focus of this committee has been a concern about how respectful behavior should be constructed and understood between the genders, I'm hopeful that as the region and our town becomes more diverse, we might include language that talks about respecting religious differences and racial and ethnic differences as well. So I'm glad to be part of it, and I hope I'll serve diligently and well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Walters, are you on Zoom?
I don't.
Do you see a Bill Walters there?
Oh, yeah, William Walters, absolutely.
Okay, now Bill said he would be on Zoom, but he was not sure he would want to make any comments. Bill, do you want to make any comments and introduce yourself or not?
He's muted, he hasn't raised his hand yet. so-
Okay, well, if he does, we can recognize him.
Absolutely.
Iselin Connell is not able to join us tonight. Amy Allen, are you there on Zoom?
Amy Allen is on Zoom.
And Amy, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Can you raise your hand?
Okay,
Let me just ask her to unmute. Maybe they don't know you.
Hi, I've been a resident of New York for the last 11 years. I'm originally from the Midwest and have really found my home here. I work in mortgage lending remotely, so I've been happy to call Ancram a full-time home for going on 2 years now. I'm also really excited to join this committee. I have extensive training on teams for HR policy and conflict resolution, along with gender inclusion, racial inclusion, and implicit and explicit bias. So I'm really excited to help out with the community any way that I can. And then I also wanted to say something for Jacqueline Ryan, who wasn't here. She messaged me and had a little message too, that although she's not able to be here tonight, she also has a long career in training and inclusion and gender equality. And she's really excited to contribute to the betterment of our town any way that she can as well. So that's
good. Thank you very much.
thank you.
so much.
Thank you. And Abby Westlake, I did not hear back from Abby about whether she was going to be able to join us. Is she on Zoom?
Westlake is not on Zoom.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everybody. Does anybody on the board have any questions for any of our newly appointed members of the committee?
No questions from me. I'm just very excited to work with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your volunteering.
Speak up, because they can't hear you if you don't speak up.
Thank you for volunteering to serve.
Okay, you or David?
No.
No? Okay,
I'll-
thank you.
I'll simply kick in. They hit a point that I had considered inherent, and that is that we are talking about disrespectful behavior in general, all facets. So you're on the right track. Turn there.
Yep, good, thank you, here. Okay, well, thank all of you who have volunteered and have been recently appointed. And we will now move on to the SIC update. Is Will Weiss on Zoom? Will, are you there?
There's somebody, yeah, there is, yeah, there's WMW.
Yeah, that would be him. Will, do you want to make a few remarks about what the SIC has been up to and what you're recommending at this point?
Sure. Thank you very much, Art. Thank you, all of you on the board. The Strategic Investment Committee was formed coming out of a couple of meetings of the Financial Advisory Committee back at the end of calendar 21. It was clear at that time, and I think remains clear at this time, that the town has a significant amount of money in its cash reserve. And I think the town board or the town supervisor himself has sometimes expressed an interest in having a cash reserve of up to $800,000, and we're closer to $1.5 million. So a committee gathered to talk and investigate about ways in which the town might invest this money now in the near future for the long-term betterment of the town. The committee has 9 members. It's met once each month up to and including this month of July. I know that Art Basson has sat in on most or all of those meetings, not as a participant, but just as a listener. And of course, I know that you, Bonnie, and Dave Hall, if he's still in the audience, were able to join us for the most recent meeting, which we appreciate very much. There are 4 areas of potential investment which the committee has discussed, and I'm going to reference them all, but I'd like to bring 2 specifically to the board's attention this evening. So the 2 on which I am not going to focus this evening, one is water issues. We know that the water supply for residents in the center of the Ancram hamlet is problematic. I believe has historically been problematic for quite some time. And we know that there was some hydrological surveying done back in 2008, but we are eager to find out more information and if there might be solutions that the town can pursue to make equitable water service available to more residents of the town. And that's still in the process. We are absolutely looking at the issue of workforce housing. Dave Hall referred to this. He and Bonnie Hunt chair the Ancram Housing Committee, which is an outgrowth of the Economic Development Committee chaired by Paul Ricciardi, who is Paul himself a member of the Strategic Investment Committee. And we, the Strategic Investment Committee, are very interested in working with the Ancram Housing Committee and ultimately perhaps with the board in terms of coming up with recommendations as to how the town might proceed to address this issue with which I know the board is familiar. But we're not going to talk about that this evening. 2 other areas are the possibility of adding a pavilion to town property in the vicinity of the town hall and or on Blass Field. I believe this is something that the town has been considering for several years in the past as well. And I'm going to come back to this in a moment with a recommendation for the town board's consideration. But fourth and finally for this evening, we have been talking throughout the year about adding solar power to the town's arsenal. There are, of course, solar panels on top of the building where the meeting is taking place right now, but there is a proposal to add solar panels to the salt sand shed connected with the town garage, which of course would serve two purposes, one of which is it would generate electricity and reduce the town's cost for electricity. The other of which is it would further take the town off of dependence on fossil fuels, which again, I know is something the town has discussed for quite some time. My fellow committee member, Susan Flam, is also on this Zoom call, and to talk about the Strategic Investment Committee's recommendation regarding solar panels, I would like to turn it over to her.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can
Oh,
hear you.
okay, thanks. So I believe also at this meeting is Bob Murphy. I see his name on the list. Bob, who spearheaded the effort to put solar panels on Town Hall, joined me in exploring the possibility of more solar panels somewhere else in town. I was very happy for his assistance as he was familiar with the process. We met with a contractor from a company called Solar Generation. The purpose was just to find out where it might be possible, what sort of power, how much we could generate, and a ballpark estimate, or an estimate, actually, it's not so ballpark, of what it might cost the town if it were to pursue this idea. So Solar Generation, we met with him twice. He came up with a proposal to add panels to the salt shed. It turns out it's a very good roof for this purpose. And the amount of panels would generate enough power for the needs of the garage and salt shed. And that would directly, meaning you would get very good financial benefit from those panels as they're on the structure that they would supply power for. The two buildings are connected. I think there's just 1 meter. There would be excess. We asked him to tell us what the most he could generate was, and that excess in a process called remote net metering, the town could get credit for that excess and apply it to other needs in town. So it could be applied to the lighting district, those street lights. I think there's 31 of them. It could be applied to the excess needs at Town Hall. The panels at Town Hall cover most of the electricity used there, but not all of it. And the electricity use will probably increase will increase when the air source heat pumps are turned on this winter. So with these new, if the town were to put panels on the salt shed as proposed by Solar Generation, they could cover not all of the usage of the town, but close to all, including the streetlights. So, and the proposal came in at about $86,000. That reflects about a $10,500 NYSERDA grant that we don't have to do anything to obtain. The contractor does the interaction with NYSERDA to get that grant applied to the job. So that's where we are with that. We, for the reasons Will elaborated, think it's a great idea. The Climate Smart Community Task Force, of course, fully supports this, and a lot of interest on the Strategic Investment Committee. So, Will, anything I've forgotten?
Susan, is the $10,000 grant reducing the price from 96 to 86 or from 86 to 76?
No, the first, 96 to 86.
Okay. And are there any other grants available that we could apply for?
Well, there might be. There might be grants out there that would be specifically applicable to solar installation. That would require probably a grant writer to research and find out. The other NYSERDA grants, I've been in touch with NYSERDA, and there's maybe some money out there. Again, I think it would require someone to really look at and research and find out. Some of that money from NYSERDA, for example, is not tied to any particular solar installation, but if you do some of the actions they deem as very effective climate mitigation actions, then there's some money out there. So yeah, again, that would be a grant writer might be able to piece that together.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions for Susan on the solar panels?
If the solar panels are gonna cost us $86,000, how much are we gonna save in electricity each year?
I haven't done that calculation. I mean, I do know that it'll cover almost all, including the panels at Town Hall, it'll cover almost all of the town's electrical usage.
I understand that, but the panels that we put in at the town hall cost us $155,000 in 2010, and we've only saved $29,000 in electricity since then. So
I heard different numbers. I heard there was a huge grant for that one, and the out-of-pocket.
There was a grant, yes, but it still costs that much money. And if this one we're gonna pay the majority for, we need to know how much money we're gonna save. Also, one of the bigger things that I would like to point out to everybody here, we've had a huge increase in solar panels all around, and we're starting to see an awful lot of fires in the energy storage portion of these solar panels. There was a large fire in the Ghent Fire District on Sunday morning at the Whittier Nursing Home with a large solar array that is there. The solar storage area actually exploded, and they had a big issue there. And it also morphed into the assisted care living facility as well as the retirement home. It exploded several different air conditioning and heating units on top of the building, as well as the kitchen area of that. So it caused hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to the facility. Bonnie, her partner in her business, had the same thing a couple of years ago with a solar storage battery in her garage that basically caused her to lose her home. I mean, it's happening quite a few places around, and I don't think they have completely mastered the situation where you have your solar array that collects the energy and then how they store it. You get a runaway thermal energy situation in these storage batteries, and they ignite and cause huge fire.
So we're not, what we're bringing before the board does not include battery storage, and I'm familiar with the fire issue, and that's why, I mean, contractors, there's been no contractor has advised us to include a battery. And Dave, maybe there's other issues I'm unaware about. I think the fire danger is related to batteries storing solar panel. The way these panels work is I think it sends the energy right into the grid. So we are not advising the board at this time to include batteries to store energy generated by panels.
That's a good thing, but again, if we're gonna spend $86,000 and it's gonna take us 25 years to recoup it, maybe it would be more advisable to wait 10 years so they get more efficient and a lower cost. That's all I'm asking, just to check into what we're really gonna save in money.
So I mean, certainly, the calculation can be done. I would think as to how many years for payback. We're not putting that requirement or demand on other proposals we're bringing to the board? I mean, this, I think, I'm speaking for myself now, I think has merit in terms of a climate mitigation effort, regardless of the number of years it takes to pay itself back. I think it's a benefit that it will save the town money. I mean, it's a possibility for the board to reduce the burden on taxpayers in the lighting district if it could choose to remote net meter the excess energy to the lights. So it does save money, and I'm not, this is me again speaking for myself, not for anyone else, but to impose this burden of a very efficient, quick payback on this particular project, but not on any other that the board considers, seems like missing the benefits of doing our part to bring, you know, to use more renewable energy. So that's just how I see it. It doesn't mean that the calculation can't be done.
I think, Susan, just, you know, in order for the board to be able to say it analyzed the project carefully and understand the economics, we do need to know how much money we're likely to save. That may not be the governing item here, but at least we need to know that. So that would be useful to do. The other thing I think you need to keep in mind is we're going to need to put this out for competitive bid. We're going to need to do a request for proposal and secure as many competitive bids as we can. It's going to be very much like the HVAC project in the sense that we can't just give the project to the most responsive solar company. We're going to have to go through that process, which is what New York State requires us to do on projects over $35,000. So that's something we should talk about as well. We may need to get an engineer involved to write the RFP. We've had that experience, and we know that you got to be careful about how you do that. So there are a few more steps in the process, I think, before the board can approve this, but let me open it up again. I think you had some questions.
I understand the concept. This is associated with the sand and salt shed, correct?
Associated with the salt shed, yes.
Just one question about that. Rather than put something there and have to move it, am I correct that we do not envision significant changes to the sand salt shed itself or its configuration or what it houses? So that once this is in place, it doesn't have to be changed and thereby add additional costs, et cetera.
You should. Even if we build a new one, I still envision using that one for salt.
Okay, all right.
Jim, if you build a new shed, where will that be? And would that also be solar
No,
suitable?
no, because I'm looking at nothing in fabric structures or bus.
Okay.
Very pretty popular.
If we have battery storage here, we don't.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about the fire issue here either.
Right.
And the other question was gonna be, you talked about a new salt shed. But you just said we would keep one.
Yeah, it is.
No, so to his question, if we did approve this plan, it would be.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to do anything else.
Oh, I got that. For sure.
Okay. Let's go.
Sure. Amy?
No, I understand.
So Susan and Will,
Dinner,
right, yes?
how much, it costs $3,100 for lighting district?
A little bit more.
Okay, because quite honestly, I don't think worrying about saving the people's burden for the lighting district is a big issue. Because if we just use the $86,000 pay for the lighting district, we would get 27 years out of that. So we could reduce their taxes for 27 years. But we're just paying for it, not doing any solar, so I kind of can't be using that as the reason. I am very much in favor of saving our environment and doing anything. But I gotta tell you, I think we need to be cost effective. I don't think we need to just do it because it should be done. You know, I mean, it's gotta work. That's what, economy of scale is what's gonna make work for everybody. If that's the case, I would ask how many people have solar on the committee have solar panels on their own, just because they can do it.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
I know when we put solar panels on, a lot of people have to re-roof. They like to put a new roof on because they think that is the best feasible thing, because once those panels are on, they're good for 20-some whatever years. So are we gonna have to put a new roof on to put the solar panels on?
I don't know, and I think that's part of the analysis that still needs to be done. Susan, do you know whether they need to put a new roof on the salt shed before they do this?
My information comes from, the highway department and from the contractor. A contractor was up on the roof, so it was a good roof, but whether we need an engineer up there, I couldn't say. That's I couldn't say. I'm not sure there's any problems with that roof, unlike the garage roof, right, where we were alerted it was not a good roof for the project. So I believe it's a good roof.
Yeah, I think we do need to look at the roof. Let me just ask Susan and Will, what is it you want the board to do tonight about this idea?
Will, I'll defer to
Yes.
you.
Thank you, and thank you for unmuting me, whoever has the power to do that. It's clear that the board wants some additional information, which I think is readily easy for the Strategic Investment Committee to gather. And that's information on two counts. One is, what would the estimated savings be? X $1,000 a year. And perhaps to your point, Dave, the answer might be it doesn't pay for itself for 30 years. But I hope the board members do all understand that we're not doing this, we're not recommending this for a purely economic savings reason. Anyway, we can respond to that question, and the question that was raised, to which Susan gave an answer in terms of other possible funding that's out there, even from just one piece of communication that you shared with me, Susan. I think it's clear that there is other potential funding out there. However, that doesn't mean that necessarily the Strategic Investment Committee is now going to be in the grant writing business to pursue some other grant. That would be part of what the board would need to consider. I certainly think this will also come to bear with a discussion when we have it around the housing issue. How does the town want to pursue other support for these projects, which the Strategic Investment Committee thinks are worthwhile investments for the town?
So let me go back to my question. What is it you want the board to do about this proposal tonight?
I want the board to let me know and let Susan know if there are any other questions, if there is other information then that we can give you in addition to those two areas I've itemized.
Anybody? So we need to know what we're going to say, whether that's relevant or not, we'll decide later. We need to know if the roof is sound.
Sorry, yes, that's a third question. I will also say that Strategic Investment made a point of asking Jim Miller that question, which I guess you raised, Hugh, about whether the salt shed was going to stay in place, and had that information that yes, even if there are additions or changes, that's going to stay there. And as Susan enumerated, when the potential contractor went and looked at it, you know, it was clear that that roof was optimal for solar panels, and the garage roof itself is not. But so, sorry, go ahead, Art.
So Will, we're talking about the roof, we're talking about the savings, we're talking about other monies. We've got to be talking about the bid process. We've got to talk about an engineer. 'Cause this is a
Well,
major project.
excuse me, let me interrupt you, Art. If what you want the strategic investment, I mean, I know you don't want the strategic investment committee to do the bid process. The town is going to do that. That's not in our authority. And if you want the strategic investment committee to recommend engineers, I'm not sure whether we can do that or not, but I'm not clear from your last comments whether you're trying to simply put this back on the strategic investment committee, you know, to have a turnkey process that's entirely signed, sealed, and delivered, or whether you, I don't mean you individually, Art, I mean you, the board, are looking to dialogue with the strategic investment committee as to what investments are good for the town.
Look, let me just make a comparison between what I understand you're going to be proposing for the pavilion, which is hire an engineer to do an analysis, and what I'm suggesting we need to do for the solar, which is to hire an engineer to do the analysis. I mean, it's virtually impossible for the board to agree to spend $80,000-$90,000 without adequate preparation. You seem to be moving in that direction on the pavilion, but for some reason, we haven't gotten into that gear on the solar. So that's my point.
We haven't heard about it.
Well, we haven't heard about the pavilion yet, except I got a note just before the meeting started with 2 engineering proposals.
Okay, well,
So we'll hear about that shortly.
gonna just comment right now that both with this and with the pavilion, aren't there contractors who will come out and look and give you an idea of without hiring one to get some estimates? I mean,
Ask them, I don't know.
well, asking everyone,
But imagine if somebody,
we have that point. If they're just making recommendations to us, what they think we can
The
do.
question is, what do they want us to do? And they haven't asked us to approve an $85,000 investment yet. And we're asking the kinds of questions that will lead to us getting comfortable making that decision.
I know that. My question is, aren't there contractors who will come out and say, I can do it for such and such without hiring an engineer? I don't know. I'm just asking.
It's a little hard for me to hear you, Bonnie, but if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking, is there a contractor who would be willing and prepared to do the solar panel installation?
No, I'm asking, can you get other estimates without hiring an engineer? I do those projects to have people come and look and say, I would do it for such and such. I mean, they would do
No,
it at your home.
the request, the issue is not, can you get a solar company to come and say it's gonna cost $80,000? We've already done that. They've
For
done
one.
for
Only
one.
one company.
Right, and they tried to get another one and they couldn't get the other one to show up. But what we need to do is a request for proposal. If this is to move forward, we
That's
need
if the
to
board
have,
says, yes, we want to do it.
yes, if we decide we want to go forward, we need a request for proposal. And the
As I
request for
understand-
proposal comes from somebody who is an engineer putting together a request, which we then circulate to all the solar companies and we get the proposals. We did this for the HVAC system.
Right. No, I'm
And
just asking a question. I'm not saying you're doing it, that this is right or wrong. I'm just saying. I haven't seen what the request is for this engineer yet. You got proposals, we haven't seen it. And I haven't heard about the pavilion yet. You've been in the committee meetings, I have not. I'm sure about it. So I'd like to hear about that.
yeah, we'll hear about that, but again,
Because they're just making recommendations to us. on what projects they think we should
Right,
move ahead.
right.
I'll just add that, Bonnie, your question, like, yes, you know, a contractor did come out and gave us an estimate, and if I was doing this at my home, a contractor, I mean, I've had contractors come out. My home isn't good for solar, but I would not hire an engineer, as you say. But because the town has to do this RFP and we need someone to draft it, it's not quite the same. So I get where Art's coming from on it, and you know, yeah, I don't want to speak for Will, but I guess what I'm thinking is, I go, you know, is this something that the board representing the town finds like an interesting thing to move forward on? And if so, you've asked some questions, we'll see what we can find out.
Susan, I think.
And then the board can move forward with it if it decides it's an investment they agree with.
Susan, just to give you a perspective, I think the board will be supportive of this if it makes sense. And part of that is, what do we save? But the other part of that is, what will it cost? And the $85,000 estimate assumes that we're not paying an engineer, that the roof is adequate, which we need an engineer to verify, so that we don't find ourselves in 3 to 5 years with a $150,000 roof project. So there are things we still need to do before we can get to yes. And the other part of it is, how much more grant money is there going to be available? For the last time we did this, when Bob Murphy worked on the town hall, it was $155,000, all of which was paid for by grants. So that was terrific for the town.
I don't think that's not, I'm not hearing that kind of money out there on grant money. So you know,
And also-
maybe a grant writer would tell us they found something, but the inquiries I've made, I haven't heard that. I think those were the earlier days of solar. Yeah, just so you know.
I want to point out that Bob Murphy is on the call and has his hand raised, and we should unmute him in a moment. Thank you, Art. You have answered my question in terms of what it is that I would hope the board would do at this meeting in terms of the kinds of additional information you're seeking. And thank you for the analogy in terms of the engineering study for the pavilion.
And by the way, you've got 2 good engineering firms that you can go to have them work on the solar thing. And I think maybe the next step is to get town board approval to do that.
Okay, we have Robert Murphy on one.
Okay, Bob. Mr. Murphy.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now first of all, I want to commend Susan for the amount of work she did pulling this all together. And I think it was an idea of, wouldn't it be nice if it wouldn't be great if the town could move to having all of their energies met by solar. And so that's where she started and we started. And so we went out to see what would we have to do? Is it possible to cover 100% of the energy that the town uses? Knowing that it's probably the energy requirements are going to go up when in the fall, when the new system goes into effect, it'll require more electricity. So there were many meetings with the guy who came over to work out how many panels to take 2 off, put 3 more on. So what he wanted to come back to you with was not just, well, here's an idea and it might cost this. This is like a real estimate. So basically what it would cost, and it does cover, if it's not 100%, it's like 98%. It's almost everything that the town would use. So that was a great thing. To your question, Art, the subsidies and the rebates that were around when we put it on the town hall, they don't exist anymore. So those days are over. But listening to everybody's questions, moving forward, at least you have an idea. You've got not just a ballpark, you've got a real good figure of $86,000. And then when you bid it out, you have something to work against. But it's, I think Susan and the group wanted to come to you with something that you could react to, that was real. And then you could, ask the questions you're asking now and about the roof. But we did, we rejected the roof on the town garage because Jim said it wouldn't support the system. So happily, the salt shed, the configuration and the south facing roofs was really good for this project. So I think you've got a lot of good information to work with, and moving forward, the other questions will be easier to answer.
Okay, sounds good.
I have a question.
Yes, Amy.
Is there an expiration date on the NYSERDA grant? Must we make a decision by a certain point in time?
No, this is different than the other grant. This grant is sort of automatically applied to all solar projects, I think, in the state. So no, there's no expiration. That said, I mean, they could change their formula anytime. So this is as this estimate could change anytime. I mean, this is as of May 2022. That was what the NYSERDA grant figure came in at, and that's what the estimate came in at. So, there's absolutely no guarantee that these numbers will stay the same.
Okay, so do you all have enough to go on for the next round of research with a plan to come back next month?
Yes, thank you, and we'll let you know whether we plan to come back next month or at some other meeting.
Okay, good work. So what's the next item? Will?
Oh, sorry. All good?
No, he's got more. Will.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the other item which we would like to bring to the board's attention this evening, as I mentioned, is a preparation, a survey that we believe is necessary if the town is going to continue, it is going to go down a path of wanting to add a pavilion to the town amenities, which it could be either on the property around the town hall or on the property at Blast Field, or possibly in both places. And the strategic investment committee, it is not recommending that at this time that the town move forward and commit to building a pavilion. But we think it is an idea with a lot of merit, or we wouldn't be recommending this survey. It is not, solving a problem like sustainable energy or water use or housing, but the goal would be to add to the assets that the town has that make it an attractive place to live. It would add to the somewhat intangible community spirit. And in that regard, we think it's very much in keeping with the comp plan, which I think even mocks out some potential design ideas for adding structures around the town hall and or Blast Field. But after having conversation with a number of individuals, including you, Dave, in your capacity with the fire department and as a longtime resident and so forth, there were questions about the usage of the land around the town hall and in Blast Field, questions about whether there are flooding dangers, questions about the former use of Blast Field as a landfill area, questions that made it impossible to pursue the idea of of constructing a pavilion without getting some more engineering knowledge. And again, Art, let me say, I appreciate your analogy from the previous conversation. So we asked the town for names of engineering firms that had experience with the town, got 2 of them to agree to submit proposals. I had shared those with Art before this meeting, and Art, I'm sure you have or will share them with all of the board members. And I don't think it's necessary for us to talk through point by point what is in those proposals. One is from CPL and has a cost of $2,200. The other is from CT Mail and has a cost of $3,925. We on the Strategic Planning Committee think that the CT Mail Associates proposal from Frank Palumbo is a better proposal and was more responsive to our request because it includes testing the soil, doing whatever drilling they feel is necessary to answer questions about flooding, environmental concerns, the kind of pilings that would be necessary for a pavilion. And although the other engineer was asked for that, they declined to put that in their proposal. And I think that the CPL one is more sort of a proposal to do some advanced work to absolutely move towards constructing a pavilion. I know I'm repeating myself, but the recommendation before the board this evening is not to go out and build a pavilion, but is to arm the town with the information that we believe is necessary so that this possible asset could be added to the town.
Will, I just emailed the 2 proposals to the town board members.
Yeah.
If you're asking the board to make a decision about one or the other of these, I think we have to postpone it till next month to give the board a chance to review the proposals. Is that going to get in the way of a project?
No, that's absolutely fine. And again, what I would ask of the board at this meeting is, are there questions about the process which I've tried to summarize, questions about what the point of this survey would be? And I'm happy to answer those, or I'm happy to try to gather more information and come back to the board.
Yeah, my concern about the pavilion project is the ongoing maintenance and management and scheduling and cleaning of the area. The town is really not equipped to do any of that. So if we have a pavilion, we're gonna probably have to add somebody to staff to be the pavilion custodian. And we just need to recognize that it's going to be a challenging situation to kind of clean up after. I also, I've heard that this is something that is going to be good for the camp, and I'm sure it will be, but 6 weeks a year doesn't seem to me to be worth an investment of whatever this is going to turn out to be. But I can be convinced that it's a good idea if there are people who are strongly in favor of it and have compelling reasons. But I will let you know up front that I'm skeptical about the value of something like that.
Good question.
Funny.
So the proposals that you got, are they looking at more than one site to come up with proposals for both the town hall and Bonneville?
They're looking at both of those properties, and anywhere on they will make recommendations as to where it would or would not be good to construct something on both of those properties.
And I don't think that it has to be, I mean, other towns have pavilions and I don't know whether they rent them out, or whatever, but wouldn't it be just like the playground, and who somebody take care of the playground and clean up after people, or? I mean, it doesn't seem like it would have to be that complicated, depending on what, if it were built, how big it was and what we would offer it for. I mean, I kind of agree that I think it'd be a nice thing for the community. I think people would use it. But it's not, you know, it's not as urgent as some of the other things.
Part of it, excuse me, I don't want to cut off other questions from board members or other comments, but part of what we did was look at Copac and Hillsdale, which have pavilions, and look at their uses. We didn't get specific figures in terms of maintenance costs, but in at least some cases, and particularly up at the structures that are near the Rojan Library, any maintenance costs are more than offset by rental costs. I think it's a little ironic that this weekend the Ancram Opera House is performing up in Hillsdale because they want an outdoor space in which to perform, but don't think they have something suitable in Ancram itself. So they are renting, in effect, pavilion space in another town. And what we've talked about in the committee is both that, and again, we're not proposing this as a big money maker for the town, but we think that those issues, which are very real and very appropriate, having to do with maintenance, are likely to be offset by private rentals for the space, or are likely to, be easily combined with the costs of running the camp, which then would no longer have to rent the tent as they do, et cetera. And we also think that the places where pavilions are successful, and not just a structure that everybody says, oh, too bad nobody ever uses that, are towns, communities that invest in thinking about it. So that in the strategic investment committee, we talked about, there's Ancram has had a winter fest in the town hall for, I guess, the 4 years prior to the pandemic. Wouldn't it be great to have a summer fest in a pavilion on whichever property it is, or maybe a spring fest or a fall fest? Are there other arts and performance related issues? The successful opening of the Ancram Little Store adds yet another potential asset and connection with space on Blast Field. So even though there was there were very specific questions raised among the committee in terms of usage, the consensus of the committee is not if you build it, they will come, but if you build it for the right reason in terms of encouraging community spirit, and if you market it that way, and if you come up with ideas and invite the community to come up with ideas that would make good use of the space, it will be a considerable asset.
Okay, Monica, did you have a comment?
Well, sorry.
Speak up, please.
I'm totally for pavilions, but don't take it in that manner. But the reason why Copac works and Hillsdale works, they have a year-round rec department who oversees the pavilion. They are the ones that take care of the renting the pavilion. You've got to be thinking about that. Who is the contact person to rent the pavilion? Who's collecting the money? Who's handing the money over? We have a very clear lately problem with garbage out here, people, and it has nothing to do with the camp. People are not putting their garbage in the garbage cans. We have, I believe, and I think Jen knows the same thing, a fair problem with our dumpster right now. All that ties in with a pavilion. So I think while it's a great idea, and it's worthwhile for the money, and it would be used and enjoyed, and it is needed, it needs to be well thought out. Because unfortunately here, stuff trickles down. And there's not always somebody in place to take care of things that need to be taken care of. So maybe not a maintenance person, there needs to be a rec, somebody that is in charge of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Other comments or questions from anybody on Zoom?
No.
So,
The one thing we should be thinking about if you guys decide to do that, while it would be good to have the camp there instead of in here for those, it's not many days, 5 or 6 days, basically,
Right.
unless it rains, which it normally does rain in the 6-week period. But we also have to think about if we're planning this, it should be storage for their stuff. There, so you have things, we're not putting it here or that get up there. We have an actual place to put it. So it really, as Mike said, would really have to be thought out pretty well to function. He has some great ideas of concerts or music or a thing, drama, theater, very good ideas, you know, and it does remove the kids out of here.
right, right, and having it up here, you at least have parking, whereas if you do the glass field, you don't have parking, so you're limiting yourself to how many people can use it.
Right, and then they're gonna park on the road and then
Yeah.
everywhere else, yeah.
You know, that's a nasty point anyway.
And I'm just thinking about, you know, people at the last minute decide to have their child's birthday party and they want it here and they want to have it in the pavilion and they're calling one of us at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, trying to track us down to use the pavilion on Saturday. You know, that's gonna happen. That's why I'm saying, if we're gonna go into this, we need to go into this together. Because it's gonna be you or me or one of you getting these phone calls about the pavilion or somebody complaining because they use the pavilion, want to use the pavilion and it's filthy. We know it's gonna happen. So I think
You don't have a building manager anymore.
No, we don't have a building manager, but clearly if we go down this road, we're gonna need to hire somebody who's a facilities recreation guru. I mean, we have a great pool management process and we have a very good process. But I think if we had a facility like this, we would need to staff it appropriately.
Other comments?
Yeah, so,
I think my comment is, you know, both of those other pavilions are like 4 miles away. We're not talking about driving to Albany to get a pavilion. Obviously, it's not in the camp, which would be a great use, but for all the other uses mentioned, you can just go to Hillsdale or Copic. It isn't as if throwing a party on our little Ancram pavilion would be any different than just going to the pavilion at Hillsdale or Copic.
okay, so Will, I guess for tonight, the committee, the board has.
What do you think about going ahead with the engineering study? I don't think the engineering study is that expensive. I think it's the next step of the project. And if we only have one that's willing to do the test boring and really examine the site, I don't think there's a lot of choice.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'd like to think we should move forward with the rather than just pushing it down the road. One example that I haven't mentioned anything to anybody about, the annual fire company hold, a Memorial Day parade every 3 years. We could end up there. That would be one good spot for us. One video. But what you, here, if it's here, we march this way. If it's there, we march that way. You know, I can go uphill or I can go downhill. It doesn't matter to me. You know,
But Bonnie and Amy, are you guys okay with David's suggestion? Bonnie?
Some pictures of the pavilion. This suggestion is what?
Go ahead with the engineering stuff. Just to see where would be a good job, a good spot or whatever.
Okay, Will, did you hear David's suggestion?
I think his suggestion is to proceed with the engineering study.
Yes.
Thank you.
So which engineering study are you gonna go with?
Yeah, and again, if the board wants to spend more time looking at these, Steve Aliha took the lead on gathering this information, spent time with both of the engineers on the site. One of them is slightly more expensive and, in our opinion, much more comprehensive in terms of the information that it will give, in terms of potential environmental issues with former landfill, potential water
Hey,
issues.
Will, let me stop you and suggest that your committee pick the proposal you like, which is slightly more expensive, and
Yes.
consider that approved by the town board. And let me ask the town board to vote on that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so go with it, and I think that'll get us some more information.
And thank you to the board for the conversation, including you, Monica, including you, Jen, in the audience, in terms of the kinds of additional information that needs to be pursued if we come up with a survey that suggests this or that location would be terrific for such a project.
Okay, sounds good. Have anything else for us, Will?
That's good. Thank you very much. As I said, the committee will be coming back to you again in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Susan, thank you. And Steve, thank you. Oh, sorry?
I would like to have one related question to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a question though, Miss Amy. I'm just wondering with the cost of fuel and utilities on the rise and winter just around the corner, is there any money earmarked for helping our members of the community who are falling short and unable to pay their bills?
If I understand your question correctly, first, I'm going to be a little bit annoying in saying we, the Strategic Investment Committee, don't have any money. You, the board, have all of the money. So you can address that question without us doing anything. But I don't mean to be facetious. We did discuss that, and it did not rise to our top 4 priorities, specifically because we know Ancram Neighbors Helping Neighbors Association does address that issue and does receive ARPA money from the town and a lot of private support. I'm sure they could use more support. It may be that issue requires more attention than Neighbors Helping Neighbors can give it. But because there's another Ancram organization already focused on that, we let it be for the time being.
Understood, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Will before we move on? Will and Susan, thank you. Steve, thank you. And now we'll go to the Climate Smart Bronze certification. Just very quickly, I want to congratulate the Climate Smart Community Task Force, CAC, Colleen Lutz, and everybody who's been working on that. We're one of 94 out of about 1,590 municipalities who's been recognized as a Climate Smart certified community. So that's something we should all be very proud of. Related to that is a resolution to approve support for the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Clean Jobs Bond Act, which is a $4.2 billion New York State proposal that will be on the ballot in November. And we have been requested by Phoenix Hudson to support this, and I'm requesting the town board approve the second resolution. Resolved that we support Ancram as that Ancram is a supporter of the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Clean Jobs Bond Act. If we approve this resolution, I will sign the town up as a registered supporter. Any questions about this? Okay, could I get a motion to approve that, please? Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. McCary Institute Road Salt Report. Thank you for sharing that. And as I understand it, based on the numbers they presented, Jim's use of 1/3 salt, 2/3 sand is about half as expensive as Brian. So I think we're in good shape.
We considerably less salt.
Yeah,
So, I don't have the equipment with me, but I can hear directly, don't help. But there was something about treating the roads,
Yeah, but you cannot do the dirt roads.
but you can do with pavers.
You can if you had the equipment and if you were sure what the weather forecast was gonna be. Otherwise, you just turn the dust and blows away.
Is it
Yeah.
different? I'm sorry, is it different equipment?
Yeah,
yeah, it is, but the bottom line is, for 100 miles of road, salt used in brine will cost $98,000. Salt by itself will cost $140,000, and it costs Jim $50,000 to use the
Not
salt
even.
sand mixture.
not even.
Not
Oh,
even-
yeah, with the sand, yes.
Yes. So,
Seems like, one of the reasons to use the pre-treat is so it doesn't run off.
No, the whole idea of that is to keep the ice, snow from bonding to the road. That's the whole impetus of it.
They
Do
talk
that.
about how it doesn't run off. And it's better for the environment, but it has to be worse for the road,
Well, it always.
just the plain salt.
Salt in general.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
What are you gonna do?
It doesn't matter what form it's in, it's bad for the road.
for how much.
Yeah.
so I think,
In terms of environmental, sorry, in terms of environmental impact, the mixture that you use, you feel.
We use a lot less salt.
a whole lot of salt.
And sand isn't.
Like they had, I think they had it down to 20 tons per lane mile. We used 6.3 last
Yeah,
year.
20 tons per lane mile.
Yeah.
Of pure salt, yeah, but, so I think, based on the report, we're doing okay. If there's new information that comes out, please share it with us. But I think their data suggests that we're on the right track. Okay?
Okay.
When you do recommend using one, it's, they're very,
It's
It's
blind.
different for, a totally blacktop road system,
right.
and every route has dirt on it. The dirt, everybody has a dirt road, we got 15 miles of it, so.
Okay, moving right along. Moving right along, the kids camp in town pool. Jen, you want to give us a pool report?
Seems to be, where's the word that everything seems to be according to schedule. We did some of the renovations, we know we have the pool lift in, we have the ramp in, the pool looks fantastic. They thank you guys for doing all that you did, between the stones and arches and the ceiling. It was thrown into our lap like days notice, 2 days notice, and they really did a great job coming forward and helping us reach our goals. Bathrooms are pretty much set. I have to order 1 or 2 more things for the bathrooms, but we're gonna paint the floors. And we have to paint the doors, there's boards that because of the renovation, we want it to look the same, and we have a white board on there, so I have somebody working on that right now, but it's coming along really good. So far, so good.
Yeah.
I think I was told that, just so you guys know, the 23rd, the pool is gonna be closed, of course, it will be a hot day. Of course it is. Okay.
But that's something that we're gonna pay to close.
Right, that's gonna paint the floors in and do that, so it's gonna work out really well.
They're closed because of lifeguards.
It turns out that, I have 5 lifeguards, and we asked for the days that they can't lifeguard. And it turns out that that day is, like, they all can't be there that day. So we usually have it probably 2 times a year, I would say.
For the day.
Yeah, it just happens, and then, and I can't put on just 1 lifeguard, I don't feel safe enough to do that. So, yeah.
And somebody broke in.
Yeah, that was a little
Too
annoying.
bad.
But they seem to be controlling themselves, so everything seems to be fine now. So and nothing was damaged or anything. I think they just wanted to use the pole.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Jen? Ruth sent us a note, which I circulated to all of you a little while ago. And basically, she says the pool is great, the lifeguards are great, the kids are having a great time, the parents seem happy, and they've got like close to 60 campers between 35 and 45 show up in any given week. They decided today not to be outdoors. They were here at the town hall again and went to an air-conditioned movie, which showed good steps. So the camp and the pool seem to be going well. In terms of my report, the financials for the month were pretty much normal. I'm still concerned about what's going to happen moving forward with sales tax and mortgage tax. I heard from BJ, the county treasurer, that he put the checks in the mail for the second quarter sales tax number and for the first mortgage tax number. So we should be getting those in the next few days. We know that we're getting about $40,000 in mortgage tax money, and we don't know what we're going to get in sales tax, but I'll let you know as soon as I get the check. Next week, I'm going to start the budget process with the department heads, and I should have a preliminary draft tentative budget for the August board meeting. And then in September, we'll do the tentative budget, in October, the preliminary budget, in November, the final budget, as we've normally done. So we will see where we come out. I suspect it's going to be a very tough budgeting cycle. Any questions about any of that? Hi.
How much of our income is the sales tax, would you say?
Well, it's normally, in a normal year, it's about $350,000.
And that's kind of a drop in the bucket, right?
Well, no, our total tax bill is 750,
Oh, okay,
and our total spending is about $1.5 million.
350,
It's significant, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
it's gonna go down.
Well, it's gonna go down from where it was, but it was up from where it normally is. 350 is kind of a normal number.
And actually, it was interesting because when you said around, it wasn't because of there were less sales tax, it was because of this reconciliation with New York City.
Correct.
Right. So it wasn't that people weren't buying as much.
Right.
That-
It's just that New York got more of its fair share.
It might go back up.
Sorry?
It might go back up again.
Well, if people stop going back to New York and stay up here, yeah, they could go back to where it was, but that's probably not likely. I would say the trend is going to probably be for people to drift back to the city. Yeah.
After the summer.
Yep. So I'll let you know what the next check looks like, but going forward, it's up in the air. Any other questions on the financial? Okay, town board members, David, do you have anything for us?
No.
No, okay. Mr. Clark.
I will use up David's time. At our last meeting, I handed out to the town board and made available to the town in general proposed local law number 6, which amends various provisions of the zoning law. I will tell you now, as I did in the public hearing, that this is largely a housekeeping action. This is not to say that it was a quick action, because it represents months worth of work by the zoning revision committee. But I use the term housekeeping because it basically cleans up, clarifies, simplifies, and otherwise improves incongruities that were in the zoning law. So what I would propose to you now is that we embark upon the secret process for this. And that would begin by looking at the full environment assessment form. Each of the town board members has a packet. Part 1, which deals with the project and setting. And I would urge the town board members to recognize that this process is normally oriented on physical development. Local laws haven't applied to them, but most of the questions that we'll be dealing with do not apply to the local law. So, if you have part 1 in front of you, recognize that this applies to the entire township of Ancram. You have there a brief description of the proposed action, which, as I say, cleans up a great deal of some incongruities in the town zoning law. And this will require certification by Art eventually. If you turn to page 2, and incidentally, all of this has been prepared for us by Nan Stoltenberg, our consultant, point of fact development, like the secret law of the New York State level. So, as you can see, it does apply as a government entity to the town board, and to the planning board. There are county agencies involved. That's why, for example, last month, we referred this to the Columbia County Planning Board, who has returned after their review the document to us and given them full go ahead. You can see the various indicators there about adopted land use plan, and over on to page 3. After that, you can flip rather quickly because pages 4 through 12 do not apply.
Ah. How about 13?
Well, once we hit 13, we can take a quick peek at the second document in your packet, which is the section F, full environment assessment form section F, additional information. And if you were to go through there, you would note that, of course, it's a type 1 action, which means that it exceeds the thresholds for secret regulation review. And you can flip through there and you will notice, certainly I trust, a predominance of reference to the comprehensive plan, including a listing of the goals in the comp plan there on that first page in the additional information. That tracks through each of the succeeding pages where we talk about what the law does, or in some cases does not do, these amendments. Gives you a quick look at some of these regulations that have been added to the use table that were not previously included. And those that have been changed or deleted, again, in a cleanup process, if you will. Similarly, so for supplemental regs. And all of that depends, as we get over on the third page or so, about definitions, which more and more play a key role in what does or does not get affected in town. You can work your way through the environmental setting, the potential environmental impacts, and note that the primary goal and purpose of this law is to minimize the potential adverse environmental impacts of future development to the maximum extent practicable. And so we talk about impacts on land, on surface water, on groundwater, on flooding, on air, on plants and animals in particular, on ag resources, on aesthetic resources, on historic and archaeological resources, on open space and recreation, on critical environmental areas, which we have none. As defined. Impact on energy, on noise and odors. And Phil, this is not the noise law. That is a separate law. Impact on human health, on the comp plan, again, the point being that it is completely in confidence with the comp plan to protect the rural character of the town. And so, having looked at section F, that additional information, we can come back. And ultimately, if we approve all of this, Mr. Batten can sign on our behalf as supervisor, attesting that the information is correct there. Which would allow us to project ourselves then in part 2, which is the identification of potential project impact. And once again, speed reading is a virtue.
Everything is no?
Because everything here is no. Impact on land, will the proposed action involve construction, etc.? No. These predominantly apply to physical development. So on geo features, on water, groundwater, and flooding, all of those things we just talked about. Again, Dan with full confidence recommends that we find the fact being done. And when you get over to the last page, page 10, as it were, we're talking consistency with community plans and with community character. Those are no, because of the wording here. The proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. To the contrary, this action is consistent with the comp plan and our land use plan. Similarly, so at 18, consistency with community character, the proposed project is inconsistent with existing community character. No, to the contrary, it is consistent with existing community character. And that will get us through part 2, potential project impact. They're all in the right direction, which then leads to the heart of the matter, which is part 3, our evaluation of the magnitude and importance of the impacts and the determination of their significance. And we must decide whether to require an environmental impact statement. And based upon all of the criteria that are laid out in the secret law and elsewhere, having reviewed part 1 and 2, we will have, in point of fact, identified no potential moderate to large adverse environmental impacts associated with adopting these amendments. And adopting this local law by itself with its amendments will not result in any physical change to the environment. It is specifically to avoid or mitigate those impacts that the town has developed these amendments. Because the zoning amendments here, as all previous, are fundamentally designed to limit adverse impacts, the town board can reasonably conclude that there will be no adverse impact to adopting the updated zoning law. This will be a type 1 review. We have looked at parts 1, 2, and 3. So as you go to page 2, look down, you see the check mark at A that this project will result in no significant adverse impacts on the environment, and therefore an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. And the magic words, accordingly, this negative declaration is issued.
Now, do we need to do a resolution to that effect, or is just signing this adequate?
I would move. Let me go to the one last document I will deal with tonight. If we accept all, particularly that negative declaration, the final page I'm going to have you deal with tonight is the ENV secret notice publication form, which simply gets sent to the state in which says that we have declared a negative impact. And so I would make a motion that the town accept as included parts 1, part 2, part 3, and adopt the negative declaration of adverse impact.
One second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for you? Is there anybody on Zoom who has a question, Phil?
Oh.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Monica, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Councilwoman Martin,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Ball,
Yeah.
Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Councilman Lloyd,
Yeah.
Councilman Clark.
Yes. And now just to wrap this up, we have received word from the planning board of Columbia County that they find this action has no significant county-wide or inter-community impacts associated with it. That's what we like to hear. Normally, I would have hoped to conclude with an adoption resolution. However, our own planning board has not yet gotten back to me. They do still have a few days for their 45-day clock. So looking forward, I would expect that next month at our meeting, we will simply have to enact the adoption resolution, which is at the back of your packet. And we'll go forward from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hugh. Okay, Amy, anything?
I know.
Bonnie,
I will just report on, the housing committee. We are very active right now. We did, as Will said, we went in front of the strategic investment committee and sort of made a presentation of why we think it's important that the town support our housing initiative. And we asked them for, proposed $100,000 to create a seed fund so that we can move ahead with planning the project. No. And they're considering it, and they have a lot of questions that we're gonna come back with, hopefully some answers. But creating a fund would enable us to apply for other grants. And their neighbors, helping neighbors had promised some money to add to that. And they also, there's a real strong feeling that if the town can show that we are committed to this, to a project and to helping with housing crisis, that there are landowners who are considering donating land and or money, and that it would give us a lot more leverage with the state and federal money if we can show that we're committed to it. We have a meeting hopefully in a week or two. I got in contact with one of the developers who they worked in Baltimore County, Orange County, Dutchess County, and are working on a project in Hudson now. And what they do is affordable housing, workforce housing. And he's going to attend our next meeting with Hillsdale and Copay. So he's got a lot of answers about how these things come about, how they're funded, how they're managed, how many units we would have to come up with to make it feasible for them to even consider it. So that's going to be really. But at some point, not now, but when we get a little further, maybe I would like the town board to maybe pass a resolution if we decide to, that would support something like that. If we decide to go ahead with it, because that goes a long way. According to the developer that I spoke to, that a lot of times town boards aren't in favor. And if we can show that we are, it goes a long way with their interest in buildings. And then immediate complaint to utilize the grant writer that we've used in the past. All that would be shown. We're making a lot of progress in figuring out how this all could happen and what we might need to make happen. So I'm really encouraged. And Dave Paul has been doing a lot of work. But the SIC had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I think some of them we can find answers for, some of them, you know, like one of the questions we want to know is how many rentals are there in Ancram? There's no way to really know. I mean, the assessor doesn't have that information. County doesn't have it. We know there's Airbnb, but we don't even know how many knows. So, but there's a lot of data out there, and one thing that we can provide for them. You know, they're doing a great job. They have a lot of, they really think through the projects that they're talking about, and they're a great committee, so. So I'm hopeful.
okay, sounds good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, is this based on the same concept that's down in Ancramdale with the 2 empty houses?
No,
No?
not at all.
No,
That's habitat, that has nothing to do with them.
Okay, I'm just curious if it was based on the same we're doing.
No, no.
the habitat houses are houses that people have to buy, take out a mortgage. The concept that Bonnie is talking about is developing rental housing
Okay,
that would be affordable for people who earn an average amount of money. So that we're talking $750 to $1,000 rentals.
so in theory, it's still based on the same ordeal, because those, in order to buy them, you had to either be a certain credential, you had to have kids with a wife, or you had to make less than a certain amount of money in order to correspond with that.
Right.
And so if you guys are gonna look into something like that, you gotta look into, because at the time when that board deal happened, I worked at a ski resort making $12 an hour, but because in the winter time, I worked a lot of hours. I wasn't qualified for one of them.
Pay too much money.
I made too much money by $500 or something a year. So that's a hard concept when you see those places so empty and you have all these people that can't afford to live around there anymore.
Somebody just moved in, but I'm saying.
5 years later, that's pretty impressive.
But these concepts, as far as I know now, it is income based, but it's based on like, the average median income. And so it's somewhat subsidized that way, but you don't have to make a certain amount or less. It's just, if you're under, if your cost burdens in your housing to a certain level, then you would qualify. And I just learned about it, so I don't know how to do it. I went there the other day.
Because when Brandon and I were first married, we applied there. We ended up not taking it. You had to make under a certain amount. We did not qualify. He was working at Harrington's and I was working at Salisbury Bank. We made too much money. We were barely able to pay our bills. So, I think when you look at setting the parameters of what the income level needs to be, we need to be aware of what it costs to live here and what people have to make to live here.
I think that does factor in. I mean, I just went there and I looked, I did a lot of work, looking at their website, which is pretty complete, and they have applications and everything. There's another one in Salisbury, same kind of thing, called Fairham Village. They've just expanded like 3. But they have like a 30-person range.
It needs to be based on the numbers of what the people
Right.
in
They have
Ancram are making, not what they going from housing or that sort of thing. It needs to be people that are realistic.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know everything yet, but I'm getting learning more as I get it. I got the committee's doing a lot of work too.
I think the hardest part of that is you can't base it off the lazy community. And I'll rephrase that, is you can't base it off people that don't want to work expecting for this government in New York State to take care of it.
No, that's different.
And no, but that's what's probably gonna happen. It's gonna be based on a certain criteria of money where the people that actually want to work in this community and try to make something are gonna end up in the same boat, and they're gonna make just a little bit too much money because they actually want to work, afford to take care of their family
Right.
that have lived here the whole
That's my goal. Is to
Well,
find a way to get those people.
That's gonna be the biggest criteria, because society itself has become so lazy and a lack of working that even the people that have a business and want to work can't find people that want to work
I know.
because this society wants to take care of them instead of making them actually work.
And I will try to remember that and make it absolute goal. If we can find a formula, get those needs, but.
I think that's what Devin and I are both trying to say is we've been, I hate to use the term fed the line before with Habitat, that it was supposed to be for young local families.
Yeah.
And then none of us qualify.
Right.
So, holding our breath going, is this another bait and switch type?
I understand that you guys are the ones who need that.
You don't want to have to pay for another group of people that don't actually want to work and then end up in housing because they were too lazy to actually do something. That's not the way this world should work, and it's just after we're dealing with everything going on. For the people that actually, put it for. Even money.
Or born here, raised here, want to stay here. We want you to stay here. That's why I'm doing this.
But it's not even based on that aspect, it's just the fact that even the younger generation, we're getting fed this narrative where it seems like, you know, if you do this criteria, everything should be given to you and everything should be this and that and you shouldn't. No different than anybody else that's grown up, you should have to work. You should have to put in as much effort as you can. You could probably, in here, in Ancram and any other place around here, you should have to work some jobs. You should have to stay, drive your butt in the ground to make it, because that's the way it's always been. For a local person or whatever to be able to make it happen and to buy a house and everything. I work a full-time job, I work my own business. I own my own house here. I got a little boy on the way. I've earned that right. And every day I can say I've earned that right. But you watch this new generation grow up and everything, and they don't want to work. They don't want to do anything in this community. And they expect everything to be handed to them. And we as a community are allowing that to happen. Not, and I say community, yes. Then New York State, then every other state. I mean, Jesus, we're down in Florida and we watch them, they come in for 2 hours, they work as a beer garden person, and then they park the vehicle because they make the criteria for the week or month. And then they park it and they get their unemployment for the month or whatever. All they had to do was drive a car around for an hour. Hey, how does that work for anyone? That's the people that we shouldn't be giving this out. I don't feel bad for them if they're not willing to put in the effort and actually do a job and actually put forth something. You know, I get, and it doesn't matter if you have 3 kids, 1 kid, or any. You're screwing the system. And the people that suffer is the people that actually work for a living, and actually got to pay for this thing. And that's kind of where I'm a little torn with the ordeal, what you're saying after going through that with, you know, those guys, because that place sat empty for God knows how long, and they could have changed their criteria around a little bit, and that place could have been filled, God knows how long. You know, I don't care who fills it, they'll fill it with people that are worth having. Open up your criteria a little bit, not let's put it down, well, you make $500 more than what you. What is that, you know? How do you get people to live around here?
Yeah, okay, good point. Good point, thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom who might have comments?
Nope.
No, okay. Thank you, Bonnie. Jim, highway.
Well, we've been busy the last month. We, did some paving, we're on paver, we leveled up spots on Hall Hill, Full Hill, First Lane. With the help of both 8 gallon mechanics. They help sell the truck. I could do a lot more, but I just about out of money. There's a lot more that needs it. We did our chip sealing on South Carson Roads last week. Then Gallon and Cobate and Hillsdale helped us out with that. And we spent last week and this week up helping them. My fuel budget is gonna be in serious trouble. I see you have a budget adjustment for that tonight, I think.
Yep.
But it is, I guess. Running about 5,000 a month, it's good $2 grand more than usual.
You did it on Sawchuck?
That's called chip sealing.
Yeah. What's the concept there? How do you also get to do that?
Yeah.
I know that.
No, that's, you put oil and stone, it seals the surface underneath and gives you a new driving. I like that, especially up there, because the oil and stone gives you a rough texture in the winter. And it's
Okay.
a little less prone to iciness
Yeah.
up there. Yeah. And David and Jen talked about, we did spend a lot of time down around the pool and ball field, before camp opened the pool. And August 1st, William Baker is going to be joining the crew tomorrow from the town of Cobate, where he was shop foreman. He's looking forward to having him on board.
What's the name?
William Baker. Baker.
And he's an MEO.
Yeah, he was a shop foreman up there.
What is the shop foreman? What is that job?
Well, he oversaw the repairs to the
So he's a mechanic as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Got all employees in detail?
Yeah, we had, well, my grandson, you guys, we talked about that, thank you for, I brought him on board, I think he's worked 4 days now, he painted our fuel tanks, and sweeping floors and stuff. And it's very useful.
Good.
He just doesn't like paintings.
Did a pretty good job though.
Yeah,
Look good.
Yeah, we gotta get him to move to Ancram when he's of the age, and then he can join the fire company.
he might, he might,
There you go.
he's been here. He had to go home, last week he wasn't here. He had to go home like his little brother, wasn't very happy about that, but.
Okay, what else you got for us, Jim?
Oh, and I'd like the permission to attend the fall conference, Highway Superintendent's Conference
I'll
from.
make that motion. Need a second? All in favor? Approved, thank you.
And I give you all the vehicle maintenance and road maintenance reports for the first 6 months of the year.
Good, thank you. A lot of stuff going on.
Yep, that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Jim?
Was Willie Baker hired on the same time Marky and G first?
No,
So there was a separate interview for that?
I advertised the job back, we're about time Tom. I'm retired, I should say.
No. Okay, Monica, anything for us?
Just real quickly, I'm closing out my books for taxes. All total, I had a 92% collection rate this year. I collected a little under 3 million. A lot of numbers without no. So my final check to the county will be $145,401.99. I will be paying art penalties that people paid $89.95.73 and $37 in notice fees. Everybody who pays after April 1st has to pay a $1 notice fee, so like 37 payments after. Think we had a good year. It's right in line with what my numbers usually are. So, and my books balance, and I'm happy.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Monica? Okay, I passed around the budget adjustments, and I appreciate a motion to approve the budget adjustments, the warrants, and pay the bills. Thank you. Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. And in terms of additional resolutions, we have a resolution approving the court clerk going to the court clerk's conference. Can I get a motion to approve that, please? Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. And we're going to do local law number 6 next month. Public comment. Do you have anything else? Nobody on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom? Anybody on the board have anything else? If not, it's 9 o'clock. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, and David seconded. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much. Philip, thank you. You can stop.